Today we're looking at session 10 in our series on Micah, looking at the first 4 verses of chapter 4. So we're going to begin and embark on a 2-chapter statement of hope that follows the single chapter indictment. In these first 8 verses of chapter 4, we're going to make a swift turnaround. Remember where things ended last time? At the total destruction of Jerusalem that was going to come as a consequence of the judgment. And yet now we're going to turn around quickly from that destruction to her eventual exaltation in the end days. So Mike is going to switch now from judgment to restitution, whatever terms you want to use. This first section actually is 8 verses long. We're only going to look at the first 4 verses. And I found a statement highlighting 11 separate factors describing the turnaround that I just mentioned. I'm going to give you that list now of 11 major points, and we're going to follow up with discussion of some of them, probably this time the first 7 of them. The list itself is found in the Bible Knowledge Commentary, a commentary produced by members of Dallas Seminary. The list of keys to the millennial kingdom and the reign of Christ. That's the 11 keys that I'm talking about that are the focus of Micah. It's a little slow getting started this day. It's what Micah is going to focus on for the next 8 verses, and then he will expand beyond that. Remember, we got 2 whole chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 5, in this segment on the hope for Israel. Well, the first point is the millennial temple will be built in Jerusalem, but it will be prominent throughout the world. That's the first half of verse 1. People all over the world will be attracted to the temple, and the temple is going to be built, as I said, during the millennial kingdom, or prior to that time. There will be a point at which the temple will be rebuilt and will be available. You can find that in Ezekiel, as I remember, starting like in chapter 40 maybe. So anyhow, we're going to have the millennial temple in Jerusalem. It's going to be prominent throughout the world. And the second point, people all over the world will be attracted to the temple and to Jerusalem. They'll want to go to the temple and to Jerusalem. It's a bit of a stretch to think about all the Gentiles in the world at that time will want to go and to the temple. But let's go see why or for what. Point 3, Jerusalem will be the place of spiritual instruction for the entire world. That's in first half of verse 2. And in the second half of verse 2, we'll find out that there will be revelation for God coming from the temple and Jerusalem. So God will continue to speak to his people, and he will do it from Jerusalem. Starting in verse 3, we've got points number 5 and 6. Number 5, the Messiah will judge matters from all over the world and do so from Jerusalem. So the Messiah, Jesus, our Christ, our Savior, will be king, and he will rule the entire world from Jerusalem. Peace, this is verse 6 or number 6, peace will be worldwide. So the Messiah's reign will be a reign of peace. That will not be broken. The Messiah will not tolerate evil. Point number 7, which is where we'll end today, and that's with verse 4. Item 7 says, Israel will dwell in peace and security. Israel prior to that time is going to be judged, destroyed, fought over. But when the Messiah takes over, in the end days, Israel will be in peace. Israel will have security. There will be no challenges to her existence. Then for next time, we're going to move into point number 8 in verse 5. And we'll see that Israel will turn to and be spiritually sensitive to Yahweh. In other words, the Israel which has fought with Yahweh in disobedience all through its history will now turn and be spiritually sensitive and will turn to Yahweh as her God. Point number 9, Israel will be regathered. All the Jewish people in the world who are existing at that time will be brought back to Jerusalem and to Israel at least. They probably all won't fit in Jerusalem. So that's going to be seen in verse 6. In verse 7, we'll see the fact that Israel will be a strong nation at that time. She will be number one, top dog, whatever term you want to use. The ruling of the Messiah will be from Jerusalem, and Israel will be a strong nation. And finally, in verse 8, we'll see the 11th point. Jerusalem will have worldwide dominion. So Jerusalem is going to be the focal center of everything that goes on in the world in those days. Now, it's going to take a while to work through these, and as I said, the last 4 points are going to wait until our next session. So we'll go through the first 4 verses, and we'll deal with the first 7 of those points. And I'll reiterate the points as we go back through them. So let's get on with verse 1 and begin our examination of Micah's list for hope. We begin with the first 2 elements. Remember, verses 1, 2, and 3 each have 2 elements, and verse 4 has a single element from our list of 11. So, the first element, I'm going to read from Micah 4:1. The first element will be described in these verses. And it will come about in the last days that the mountain of the house of the Lord, that will be Mount Zion, will be established as the chief of the mountains. So what he's really speaking about here is the temple, and Zion, of course, Mount Zion is considered a synonym for Jerusalem. So he's saying that we're going to have the temple. It's going to be established in Zion, and so we'll be there during these last days when the hope will spring eternal. Number 2 is in the last two phrases from verse 1, and they look like this. It will be raised above the hills. That means that this temple and Jerusalem will be top of the world. It'll be above everything else that will compete with it. And the peoples will stream to it. So we're going to have people from all of the world streaming into Jerusalem and to the temple. Again, point 1, the millennial temple will be built in Jerusalem, but it will be prominent not only in Jerusalem, it'll be prominent throughout the world. It's going to be top dog, as I've been saying. The mountain of the house of the Lord is Mount Zion, just outside Jerusalem. Mount Zion will become numero uno, premier in all the world. People all over the world will be attracted to the temple and to Jerusalem. The picture here is one of a river of humanity, primarily Gentile now, flooding toward the capital city of Israel, Jerusalem. Now, how's all of that going to take place? Zechariah, and most of you who've been with us a while know that Zechariah is one of my favorite books. Many scholars believe it's the most complete prophecy on the end days. I'm going to read several verses beginning in chapter 8 with verse 3, Zechariah 8:3. Thus says the Lord, I will return to Zion and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. Remember, this is after God says, you think because I'm in the temple you are safe, Jerusalem? Watch what happens when I leave. So God's presence went out of the temple and then Nebuchadnezzar came in and destroyed everything. Now Zechariah is predicting that Yahweh will return to Zion and dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, his presence being known to be in the temple. Then Jerusalem will be called the city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the mountain of Yahweh of hosts, will be called the holy mountain. So Zion will be the holy mountain and Jerusalem the city of truth. And if we skip to chapter 14, verses 9 and 10, well, at least verse 9, we read this, and the Lord will be king over all the earth. Yahweh is the Lord, but we're talking here of the Messiah, so we're talking about Jesus Christ. And the Lord will be king over all the earth. In that day, the Lord will be the only one, and his name the only one. Christ will have no rival from false gods in those days. Hosea added a bit in Hosea 3:5, and where Hosea writes, afterward, the sons of Israel will return. This is after the destruction, the long absence. The sons of Israel will return. Hosea is speaking specifically to the northern kingdom now. And they will seek the Lord their God and David their king. And David himself isn't spoken of here, of course. This is Christ. And they will come trembling to the Lord and to his goodness in the last days. Remember, his goodness is that aspect of Yahweh from which flows love, mercy, grace, all the good things you want. But God had made this promise way back to Abraham. Now, when he made it to Abraham, it seemed a bit vague because of an absence of detail, but there it was, nothing nonetheless. And I'm looking at Genesis 12:3. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and you in all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And that's exactly the description that we've gotten so far in those first two aspects of our list of 11. Micah continued with his thought in verse 2, and we're going to see elements 3 and 4 of the list. Relative to item number 3, it says, and many nations will come and say, come, let us go out to the mountain of the Lord. You can remember that from some Psalms probably. And to the house of the God of Jacob. There's also a psalm for which those are central words. That he may teach us about his ways and that we may walk in his paths. So all these people streaming to Jerusalem in these end days are coming to get close to God, to go to the temple in order to be taught of God for the purpose of walking in his paths, for purpose of being obedient to his leading. That's good news if you want to hear it. And relative to item number 4, for from Zion will go forth the law, and this is not the law of Moses. This is a general full law of God, even the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. So they're going to come to Jerusalem to find out everything that God expects of them, wants of them, and will expect from them. Jerusalem will be the place of spiritual instruction for the entire world. This was not the first time that the Jews had, or weren't Jews at this time, of course. This is Old Testament times before, and the ones we're looking at, it's before the captivity of Babylon. So they would have been called Israelites, maybe still called Hebrews, but they were not yet called Jews. But you know what I'm talking about. Zechariah 8 verses 20 and 23 through 23. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, it will yet be that people will come, even the inhabitants of many cities, and he's talking about coming to Jerusalem, and the inhabitants of one will go to another, saying, so people between these cities will talk with each other, let us go at once to entreat the favor of the Lord and to seek Yahweh of hosts. I will also go. So they're talking at a point in time in which people of the world are talking to each other and say, yeah, let's go, let's go. So many peoples and mighty nations will come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem and to entreat the favor of the Lord. They're coming to Yahweh in Jerusalem to have an audience with him, to learn from him, to then follow and obey him. Verse 23, thus says the Lord of hosts, in those days 10 men from all the nations will grasp the garment of a Jew, and that's the translation given here, saying, "Let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you." And remember, I'm reading from Zechariah, and Zechariah is a post-captivity prophet. So the word Jew there wasn't as strange as I implied it may have been. Interestingly, this scenario places the Gentiles as flocking to Jerusalem to get right with God. The Jews' perspective of end times was that the Messiah would, I'm going back to the Jews now, the Jews at that time, when they thought about the end times, they believed that Messiah would destroy the Gentiles and their power and their potential threat to Israel. But now these prophecies are saying that the Gentiles are going to flock to Jerusalem to get to know Yahweh. Quite a difference from what the Jews themselves thought. May have time later to speak, but in I think it's Luke 4, Jesus' first sermon back at his hometown of Nazareth, he made issue with these things, and it nearly got him killed. We may talk about that somewhere along the line. But when Jesus, and this is, when he gave his first sermon at Nazareth, and again, that's in Luke 4, he made it clear that it was not to be his role as Messiah to destroy the Gentiles. And again, the congregation took offense at that and tried to kill him. Remember, throw him over a cliff outside the town. So they wanted to throw him over because he was saying that the Gentiles are going to participate in the end times Jubilee, the year of favor of the Lord. Gentiles will be there celebrating just as much as the Jews will. And that did not set well. One might suspect that Micah's audience, too, wouldn't have thought too highly of what Micah was saying. What do you mean all these Gentiles are coming to Jerusalem? What could that mean for us? Well, let's go to verse 3 and point 5 from our list. He will judge, and that's the Messiah, will judge between many peoples, and he will render decisions for mighty, distant nations. All nations of the world are going to look for him to intervene in disputes and to render decisions. How do we solve this problem? Then they will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. And you remember some of these from Isaiah in particular, that this end times is going to be a time of peace. Why? Because it's ruled by the Messiah. He's going to judge all disputes or differences. He will find solutions to all problems. And then in number 6, nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they train for war. War is going to be off the table as the Messiah reigns. Number 5, again, the Messiah will judge matters from all over the world, and he will do so from Jerusalem. And Jesus will be the final authority for arbitrating between different peoples, different nations, and different positions. And number 6, peace will be worldwide. War will be no more. And I mentioned a minute ago that Isaiah spoke to some of this. As a matter of fact, it's from Isaiah 11, verses 6 through 10. This is a 5-verse passage, longer than the one we're studying today, but Let me read it so that you can recall it. And the wolf will dwell with the lamb. That's an implication of peace, of course, because they're normally enemies. And the leopard will lie down with the goat, the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and the little boy will lead them. That's a very heavy description of peace. Also, the cow and the bear will graze. Bear's not going to eat cows, they're going to eat grass. Their young will lie down together, bears and cows together, peacefully. And the lion will eat straw like the ox, and the nursing child will play in the hole of the cobra. Some translations say asp, but it's a cobra. And the weaned child will put his hand on the viper's den. Children will have no fear from serpents. They will not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Remember, they're all coming to Jerusalem to learn from God about his ways. Verse 10, then it will come about in that day that the nations will resort to the root of Jesse. Of course, that's the Messiah, Jesus Christ, who will stand as a signal. He will be the king. He will be the ruler, who will stand as a signal for the peoples, and his resting place will be glorious. Of course, that's Jerusalem. Then how about number 7? We find that in Micah 4. 4 goes something like this, according to Micah. And each of them, each person, will sit under his vine. He'll sit under his own vine, and under his fig tree, under his own fig tree, with no one to make them afraid. Everyone's going to be under his vine, under his grape, and nobody's going to be afraid. This is a time of absolute peace and security. For the mouth of the Lord, the mouth of Yahweh of hosts, has spoken. What does that has spoken mean? This is a decree of Yahweh. In the end days, there will be worldwide peace. That's item number 7. Again, sit under his vine, signal safety, security, peace. And how will that come to be? 2 ways. Number first is that the rule of the Messiah. The Messiah will bring it about. And secondly, it will be fully a work of God. Let's look at Ezekiel. I had mentioned Ezekiel earlier. Ezekiel 11, 19, and 20. And I, that's Yahweh, shall give them the heart, one heart. In other words, all people will have one heart, and shall put a new spirit within them. And I shall take the heart of stone out of their flesh, and give them a heart of flesh. I'm going to give them a new heart, that they may walk in my statutes, and keep my ordinances and do them. In other words, these will be an obedient people. Then they will be my people, and I shall be their God. If you remember, this was language used by Hosea, where God had him name 2 of his children, Lo Ruhama, not compassion or no compassion. Lo ami, not my people. But he said, in the end, when I bring and regather Israel back, there's going to be peace, and I will call them Ami. I will call them my people, and they will say, Yahweh is our God. So he's wrapping this up with a nice bundle, at least this far through. We still got 4 more elements of the list to look at next time. I will call them my people, and they will say, Yahweh is our God. So he's wrapping this up with a nice bundle, at least this far through. We still got 4 more elements of the list to look at next time. But he's saying that God has decreed that in the end days they will be ruled worldwide by the Messiah, the stem of Jesse, Jesus Christ. And there will be absolute peace for all, everywhere, and the peace will be maintained by the rule of the Messiah. So, Micah is saying what? Take it to the bank, for God has decreed that everything I have just described to you in these 4 verses. Of course, Micah wasn't doing things in verses, but Micah has essentially told the people, this is the way it's going to be. But then let's go look a bit at another passage from Isaiah that talks about this same time period. And this is back in Isaiah 2, again, the first 4 verses of chapter 2. And the reason I want you to listen to this is, see, have you heard this before? The word which Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now it will come about that in the last days the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the chief of the mountains, and will be raised above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. You heard this? Just been reading this out of Micah, right? And verse 3, and many peoples will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways, that's Yahweh, of course, that we may walk in his paths. For the law will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, and he will judge between the nations, and will render decisions for many peoples. They will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. Doesn't that sound pretty much like what Micah has just said? In some places, almost word for word. Isaiah added a touch of hope too. And God is speaking about hope here in Hosea 2:15. Then I will give her vineyards from there, and the valley of Achor as a door of hope. Achor doesn't sound like hope, does it? And she will sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. So Hosea said in the end days they're going to be just as happy and excited as they were to get out of Egypt. And then Amos even adds something in here a bit, as well as Amos says something here. Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when the plowman will overtake the reaper. There'll be such an abundance that the can't even harvest it fast enough to make way for the plowman to seed for next season. And the treader of grapes, him who sows seed. When the mountains will drip sweet wine, and all the hills will be dissolved. Going to flatten everything out a bit. And verse 14, also I will restore from captivity, the captivity of my people Israel, and they will rebuild the ruined cities and live in them. They will also plant vineyards and drink their wine, and make gardens and eat their fruit. I will also plant them on their land, and they will not again be rooted out from their land. At some point, Israel's going to be put, period, forever, which I have given them, says the Lord your God. So they're all speaking about the same things, these end days, when everything is set right. By the way, that was what the purpose of the year of Jubilee was, to set everything right back exactly as God had established it after the conquest of Canaan. Now they're using that same language to talk about the end times. It will be a time of the Lord's favor. It will be a time of Jubilee. Everything will be restored, complete, and permanent. Zechariah 3:10, look at Zechariah again. In that day, declares Yahweh of hosts, every one of you will invite his neighbor to sit under his vine and under his fig tree. Not only will you sit under your own vine, your own fig tree, you're going to call everybody in to do it with you, to sit with you. So it's talking about a time of absolute peace and security. And this was to remind them of the glory days of David and Solomon. This was when David and Solomon were reigning. Israel was at its maximum size territory-wise. They were abundant in economics. Everything was great. Look at 1 Kings 4:25, makes this point, at least about Solomon it does. So Judah and Israel lived in safety. This was a period of time before they started having disagreements after the split. Every man under his vine and his fig tree, from Dan to Beersheba, that's from the north to the south. The entire nation was at peace all the days of Solomon. So this thing will remind the Jews of how it had been under David and Solomon. Only this time it's permanent. Just like all the other Old Testament prophets who are speaking about last days, Micah raised the bar of hope even in the face of coming terrible judgment, which was not unusual for a prophet to first talk about judgment and then talk about restoration. Only this time it's complete, it's permanent. Jerusalem would rise from total destruction and ruin after the Babylonian conquest to become the number one place everyone wished to go and connect with Yahweh. So that's a vast change even from Israel. Israel was seldom in that state of spiritual excitement. But Micah, he wasn't finished with these 4 verses. We're only through 7 of the 11 elements of that hope. So we'll look at and finish up the work with that list next time. Thank you for being